Hello and welcome to the Gambling Files podcast, the podcast that has to go and play a round of golf in a little while. I'm your host, John Bruford, joined by your interim co-host, Harry C. Lang. Harry, hello.
Hi, John. Morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you are. It's very nice to see you. And as John alluded to, I am here in a golf shirt because I'm off to play golf in Henley, of all places. Most people associate Henley with rowing or fine living, but I'm going to play golf there, which I'm quite excited about because the sun's come out as well.
That is nice. And Henley, I would definitely associate Henley with the possibility of golf because it's a bit posh.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Henley's probably, it's almost certain to have a classic car dealership or two, and it's got some quite swanky restaurants.
Antiquarian bookseller, bound to have
Antiquarian bookseller. It'll have one of those kitchen places where you look in the window and go, that looks like a nice kitchen, and then you see that the oven is £17,000 and realise it's a kitchen shop for people that don't look at prices. That's Henley.
Yeah, and for people that probably don't cook.
Oh, of course they don't cook. Or they do cook, but they've got two kitchens. They've got the one with the £17,000 oven and the Frigidaire, fridge freezer, and the ice machine. And then somewhere buried behind in like a second hidden basement utility, they've got like the industrial kitchen where the minions put all the food together and then transfer it, possibly via some sort of clever system where they slide it through the back of the swanky oven to pretend that the hostess has made a fine dinner herself, but in fact hasn't.
When you said two kitchens, I just assumed you meant like one to wash, one to wear.
Yeah, it does feel like that. Although there's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with, or I think having two dishwashers. That's always been a bit of a dream of mine. So you don't have a cupboard for plates and glasses and knives and forks. You just have two dishwashers, and you eat your dinner and you put your plates in the dishwasher. And then when it's full, you turn it on and you just open the one next door and collect out the clean stuff and then use that. And you basically operate a sort of cycle system where you never need to actually unload the dishwasher, which is a hateful job that I really dislike doing.
Living the dream, man. That would be living the dream.
I'm a man of simple pleasures.
I used to be what they call a KP, a kitchen porter. So I used to wash up in a restaurant.
Yeah. I was a kitchen porter and a salad chef in Courchevel, of all places.
Yeah, I did it in Church Stretton. I think we probably had a different experience.
I don't know. I was treated pretty badly. I don't think the Alps has the same sort of workers' rights laws as anywhere in the world. Treated pretty badly. A lot of burns, a few knife injuries. I was only 18. I wasn't that good at making salads. They did sell them for like €30 a pop. I was always quite proud of that. The one I had to make, which had a bit of bread with goat's cheese, and I'd whack it in the pizza oven for 20 seconds so it melt and bubbled. That went from being a €20 salad to being a €30 salad just because it had bubbling cheese on top. So yeah, my meager self-esteem at the time, that was a score.
Wow. Yeah, I worked in. God, I can't remember what the name of the hotel is now. Oh, the Long Mind Hotel.
The Long Wind.
Mind.
Oh right, I was going to say like the Long Wind Hotel.
No, the Long Mind is a hill in Church Stretton.
Where is Church Stretton?
It's about 16 miles north of Ludlow.
Oh right, so is it still Shropshire? Yeah.
And I was a live-in KP, and
see that's quite a good perk though, because once you factor in costs, like actually that goes from being I assume what would have been a sort of £5 an hour job back in the day to being worth much more like 10-15 quid an hour because you're not paying rent or anything.
Well, this was 30 years ago.
So £3.99 an hour.
I'm not even sure it was that. So 30 years ago, and I was living in, and my actual money was 60 quid a week, which even 30 years ago was fucking pitiful. And the hours were kitchen hours. Antisocial is not the word.
Yeah, so sort of 7 a.m. through to midnight.
Some days, yeah. If there was a wedding party, and yeah, absolutely.
It's actually possible that you did do a stint of work for less than £1 an hour. Actually,
Yeah,
highly possible.
I think it's feasible. There was one day where I still hate creme caramel as a result of this.
Really.
Chef decided he was going to do individual creme caramels for this wedding party.
The arrogance of it.
He was a lovely dude, but he used the breakfast teacups to make these individual creme caramels. So I then had to creme caramel. You've got to fucking do the top of it, haven't you?
Yeah. You got to burn off all the sugar, caramelize it.
So I had to basically chip all of that off these 200 mugs, ready for breakfast service the next day,
That's a horrible job.
and do the usual restaurant stuff plus all of the dishes from the wedding party.
Yeah, you're earning a £1 an hour there, aren't you?
I really did.
So you dislike creme caramel. I had a bad experience. I say I had a bad experience. My very close friend Guy had a bad experience with lemon curd, because where I grew up around Newbury, in sort of Berkshire, Hampshire way, there weren't many jobs, especially before we could drive. So age like 15, 16, like my mum had to drop me off for work in the holidays because I couldn't get anywhere. And there was a jam factory on Greenham Common, where all the nuclear weapons used to
Yeah.
park themselves and protest and whatnot. Anyway, this English Provender was the name of the jam company. And everyone worked there at some point. It was kind of a rite of passage job. And you go there and you basically stick labels on 1 billion jam jars, or if you got lucky, you were working the machines and you'd be sort of quality control checking. And they had like a new starter. What's it called? It's an initiation basically. And I somehow missed it. I think they were just hung over or whatever, the team who worked there full time. But when my friend Guy came along to do 2 days' work, he came to stay with me, and I was like, we can earn some money together. Come and stay with me. We'll go to the jam factory. They put him in the lemon curd room. And what they did, because lemon curd, obviously boiling hot, lemony sugar liquid, comes down from the ceiling, through this pipe, into the massive vat, gets basically funneled out of there into the jarring machine. And what they could do, and what they did to Guy, who was dressed up in a sort of all-in-one onesie with goggles and everything, his job was to make sure it was still working. And that wasn't actually a job. They just wanted him in the room. They stopped the machine, and then they let the pressure build up, and then they opened it again. And it shot this wodge of molten lemon curd down at a bowl, which then exploded up and across the room and all over my friend Guy, who I don't think he was actually burnt, but I mean, it was pretty unpleasant. I mean, head to foot, boiling lemon curd, even an all-in-one outfit, it's going to sting and stick a little bit. So he didn't come back after that.
Yeah, I can see how you would harbour ill feelings towards lemon curd.
Yeah. Anyway,
Delicious as it is.
It wasn't a me story. It's not that delicious though, is it? It tastes a little bit like, I imagine, Fairy Liquid, the yellow one, would taste.
Well, I think as an adult now, I haven't had lemon curd for a very long time, but I think it's maybe tainted by the magnificent experience that is lemon posset.
I had a lemon posset on Friday evening, having not had one in decades. And a friend of ours had us around for a barbecue, and she's a very good cook. So she'd scooped out all the lemons, and we had in lemon. And she said, look, it's really easy. People think it's hard because it's in a lemon. It looks really quite flashy. But basically, it's just like this lemon mousse that you shove into a lemon peel, and it looks the business. And she was right. And it did taste really good. But yeah, lemon posset. That's it. I'm not a pudding man myself, but I went out of my way to have that one. It was pretty tasty.
Yeah, it's a top five dessert for me. Mostly, obviously, these days my desserts are made of meat. I need to take a moment to mention our sponsors. In no particular order, we have Optimove, the industry's #1 CRM software provider. And Harry, if you should want to avail yourself of Optimove's fabulous software, and it is fabulous, I've seen the demo.
I have done twice in the past.
I've lived the dream. Well, then you know how good it is. It's probably leapt on from that because they've introduced a couple of new things recently, which are very sexually attractive indeed.
No one needs to be turned on my CRM systems. I'm just going to point that out.
People are.
It's unhealthy. No,
people are.
That way. I mean, next step, we're going to have VIP programs dressed up in, lingerie, and
that's such a good idea.
It's a slippery slope.
Such a good idea.
be like those old things. You remember the nut things in pubs when, the nut packets revealed, like Sam Fox or
Yes,
Gail
I do
Porter
remember
behind them.
those.
You have a VIP program and it sort of reveals something titillating as you go through the different RFM value segmentation model segments. I'm sure I've pitched that idea at some point, which thank God people would have ignored me on.
Well, Harry, I'm listening.
No. I mean, since I'm still actually in the markets to look for clients or preferably a full-time CMO role. No, I'm going to shut up on my crap ideas. I think I'm going to hold fire. I'm going to go back to sensible.
So Optimove, used by more than 50% of the EGR Power 50 in the iGaming industry. And if that isn't enough to satisfy your curiosity, if you use the link in the show notes, they will give you a first month free so you can see how sexy it is. They do truly believe in their product, and for good reason. And then we have the delicious lemon posset of the sportsbook world, OddsMatrix. Finton saw this demo. I didn't see this demo, but he told me the demo was awesome. I have no reason to disbelieve him, and the amount of companies that are going over to OddsMatrix, their providers, should tell you pretty much all you need to know. It's the best advert that a business can have in this industry. Everybody wants to know how everybody else is doing it, but OddsMatrix, everybody's leaping across to there. Just saying, there's probably a reason. And if you tell them that we sent you, then maybe they'll renew their sponsorship for next year. I don't know for sure. Anyway, last but not least, Clarion Gaming, the beautiful, beautiful people who organise ICE in Barcelona, which is in January 2026. I'm going to be there. Harry might be there. Finton, I'm pretty sure, will be there. So that's 3 good reasons to go, or 2.5. Could go up to 3 if Harry confirms. It's ICE. And it's Barcelona, so why on earth wouldn't you go to Barcelona? Fuck. Like, if that's the worst thing you have to do this year, or next year, I've got to go to Barcelona for the best part of a week. Sucks to be me. It's not a hardship. And of course, last year's event was amazing. I mean, it was just phenomenal. Apart from the coat desk incident, but I'm told that won't happen again.
There's always one. There's always an end of night foible around the coat desks.
No, it was in the morning.
Oh, it was in the morning. Oh, even worse. What's your favourite restaurant in Barcelona to recommend to your listeners?
Fuck. You think I have a favourite Barcelona restaurant? Jesus.
I know most people do. Most people have per city. There's like the go-to place.
I went to a steak restaurant with Finton at ICE this year, and it was very, very good. Very nice. Can't remember what it was called.
Can you give people like a sort of sector or a quartier or an area that it was in so they can at least hunt it out?
It sold steak.
Oh, Jesus. Gothic Quarter? Anyone near the Ramblas?
Couldn't tell you.
Near the beach?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay, that's basically totally useless.
But it's Fenton's favourite.
Right.
I'm not a favourite restaurant sort of person because eating out is tricky for me sometimes.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
I bet it was a nice restaurant, and also you could tell that most of the people in it were gaming industry because it was like 6:00 and it was full. 6:00 Barcelona, they're not going to be people from Barcelona.
No.
But it was very lovely.
They probably. It's good that you enjoyed yourself because they probably did serve you like last week's cast-off steaks. I mean,
if that's their cast-offs, then
well, this is it. Basically, you were fed horse steaks from 2 months ago, and you still enjoyed it. Just imagine how good midnight would be.
I did have horse steaks. I met I was at a business in Ljubljana, and we went to a restaurant, and I had horse steak, and it was beautiful.
So Ljubljana, that's I always get confused because
Slovenia.
Slovenia, exactly where I went. I had a client in Slovenia, and he took me out for this meat feast in this middle of a park. There's a barbecue place, and they just served a platter of meat. And his business partner did say to me, "Look, we don't want to sort of trick you, but one of these is horse, just in case you don't want it." I was like, "Look, when in Rome, God, it was good." It was like the most tender of fillet steak. It was incredible. And then they had fillet steak next to it, and then all the other cuts of every other animal on earth. It was like Noah's Ark of a barbecue.
That does sound pretty
Really
good.
good. And
But
Slovenia,
it's
there's a lot to love about Slovenia.
I love that country. Love that country.
Really nice country.
But it's one of the weird things about the UK. You know, we won't serve horse to eat, but we're a big exporter of horse meat.
I did not know that.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to double check that with AI.
Is that when little Jenny gets bored of Pony Club and starts getting into, boys and driving? And like mummy and daddy are like, right, this horse box costs us 25 grand. The horses are like net 20 a year. We got to get rid. Do you reckon there's like a Pony Club black market that just ships them over to France?
I've just found 99% of horse meat in England and Wales is exported.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I don't even. It's one of those ones. It's like it probably is legal to eat it over here, but it's just never been pushed.
Eighth largest exporter of horse meat in Europe.
Fascinating. I mean, because it does taste bloody good. It just, it's not socially acceptable to eat a horse, which is weird because deer's eaten, roebuck's eaten, muntjacs eaten. Most gamey things are.
Around my way.
Horse is like.
If you say you're in Henley and you want to buy venison, you're going to probably pay through the arse for it. Never mind the nose.
You shouldn't do though, because God, it's there's so much venison floating around. I mean, they have to cull it half the time on these estates, and then
that's
they
it.
Can't
Well,
give it away because people don't like it as much.
I'm surrounded by country estates and managed forestry, and deer are incredibly destructive.
Yeah.
And so like back when I was living in Ludlow, I could go down to the butcher's and I could get a 1.5-inch thick venison steak for about £3.50.
Yeah. Well, same with wild boar. There's across Europe, but there are wild boar in the UK. That stuff's really tasty, and it's basically vermin. They genuinely ruins crops, trashes forests, runs across roads, probably hurts small children occasionally, and that stuff is good to eat. I think there should be more effort to get these things back up the top of the menu.
I'm a big fan. But Barcelona ice, go. And there's a good steak restaurant there. Ask Finton for his tips. This episode of the podcast, I should say, is we're joined by Jonathan Aiwazian, who's the founder and CEO of IDPair, and it's talking about the difficulties of doing sort of interstate player protection, cross-operator exclusion, that kind of thing. And it's a really interesting conversation. He's a really good guy, and he to take away any surprises late in the episode, he's never seen Cobra Kai,
which is good for him.
It's not good for anybody.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Harry, it's better than you think. You just. I'm starting to wonder if you're a little dead inside.
If I can't make sweeping generalizations about things that I haven't seen, then what am I here for?
White middle-class Englishman making sweeping generalizations. My God, talk about marginalised.
Even my privilege is painful.
I know, I feel for you. I really do. I really do.
You shouldn't be, really.
But meet Jonathan Aiwazian, and let's learn about the problems of doing things in the US without federal oversight, and the possibility that in some instances federal oversight might actually not be a bad thing. We meet this week's guest, the excellently named Jonathan Aiwazian, founder and CEO of IDPair. I wrote a phonetic spelling of your name, Jonathan, because, I'm in the UK and names have generally two origins. They're either geographical or vocational. So, they're generally pretty straightforward, and we don't have cool names like yours.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and it was a great pronunciation, and, I've heard it pronounced always. I still answer to all of them, so thanks again for having me. As
I've said before, I'm sad to say on this podcast, my nickname in the first magazine I ever worked for. My nickname, but my real name is Jonathan Bruford. My nickname was Julie Boobfruit. Because whenever people were sending in packages to me, they would get the J, the B, and the F, and that was it. It could be any combination of words, not even names, just words, but they would involve a J, a B, and an F, and that was it. So it was a free for all on J, B, and F, and the one that I remember the best was Julie Boobfruit.
I'll call you John just for this interview. I'll just call you John.
I do answer to Julie. The other one was the Laughing Buddha.
Huh.
I used to laugh when I was younger.
I'm going to call you Boobfruit. I think it's way better.
It's good, isn't it? It's really catchy.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got Charlie Chubb to thank for that. Also a fantastic name.
Brilliant name.
It's not his real name. Amazingly. Jonathan, what does IDPair do?
So we are a responsible gaming technology company. We try to kind of change the perspective of responsible gaming to one of player health. So I can tell you a little bit about my background, but the gist of it is that, operators kind of have a duty to have certain responsible gaming things in place from a compliance and licensing perspective. And that sort of led to a lot of players actually falling through the cracks of responsible gaming help that they could receive. So what we do is try to flip that on its head and say, what would actually help the player here rather than help an operator stay compliant. Okay.
I think certainly with the speed of growth of the gambling industry in the US following the PASPA repeal, I don't think the sort of support structure has even come close to keeping pace with the growth, and so there's an element of sort of rearguard action, I suppose. States are trying to catch up. They're trying to find funding, especially in states where they've fucked up the regulations, or rather, they've got the regulations just right for the operators, where you can do things like offset your marketing costs or your player acquisition costs against your tax.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I actually grew up in California, moved to New Jersey in 2019 when PASPA was repealed and online gaming was just starting to come about there. And on day one, when sports betting was available, I worked for an operator there, and we launched on that day. So I've seen from 0 to 1, when we had no sports betting online in New Jersey, to having everything. And what happened was new states started to come online after that, and each state sort of put their own policies and regulations in place that didn't necessarily think about the next state over. So when Pennsylvania came online, they didn't think about, what if a player self-excludes in Pennsylvania? Do we want them to be able to play in New Jersey? I think if we thought about that early, then there wouldn't be a need for the things that we're doing, like the National Voluntary Self-Exclusion Program. So each state coming online one by one kind of created these silos of data that allows these weak points in how responsible gaming has been done.
Yeah, Jonathan, that national voluntary self-exclusion, et cetera, you mentioned, is that effectively GamStop, but the US version? I'm a little bit behind. I'm going to hold it like this.
No, not quite under your actual, not in your mouth.
It was literally here, 1 inch away from my mouth, and then I moved it there.
That's better. Now, that's where it needs to be.
Can we explain to viewers? I'm not trying to eat my fingernails through this entire podcast. My headphones have given in, so this is how I'm going to have to talk. Anyway, sorry, Jonathan. So, yeah, European and UK viewers will probably sort of think, GamStop and the universal self-exclude. Is that what that one you mentioned is trying to do over there?
Sure. In a way, yes, but in the nuts and bolts of how it works, it's a little bit different. So for the player, they want to self-exclude, they want to stop playing, they are able to do so through GamStop, they're able to do so through the National Voluntary Self-Exclusion Program. However, in the US, we have 500 moving parts to make it happen. So we have each state that has to join and allow people to get in the door through the national program. But we also have within states different forms of gaming. So for example, if you look at Massachusetts, they have casino and sports betting, which is overseen by the Mass Gaming Commission. You have fantasy sports, which is overseen by the Attorney General, and you have lottery, which is overseen by the lottery. So those three bodies all do a different regulation, policy, etc. So in order to self-exclude from all three, assuming that they all have self-exclusion, you'd have to go one by one to each body and do so. And in states where there is no statewide program, you take a look at a state like Wisconsin, it's all tribal casinos. There's no statewide self-exclusion program. So you have to go drive to each tribal casino in Wisconsin. There's about 20 of them, and do it one by one at each casino. So for someone living in Wisconsin, there's no easy way to self-exclude from the casinos. That's something we're changing through our work with the tribes there.
Yeah, because while you're there, you might as well have a play.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
I'm assuming that's exactly what you're doing there to go to 20. I mean, it's almost promoting it by, you have to go there. Yeah, like you say, you may as well have a punt while you're next to the casino attempting to self-exclude, which I'm presuming is probably quite a logistically unsound process anyway. So is that effectively the nut you're trying to crack, Jonathan, is just cutting out all those blockers to allow people to have a one-stop shop? I don't want to bet anymore. I want to cease these behaviors. So one tick, one opt-in, and you're done.
That's correct. So yeah, it's basically putting all these pieces together to give that player a way to get an easy self-exclusion. And when you think about states working together, in general, they have a good relationship, but there are data privacy laws and regulations that prevent them from sending data back and forth on self-excluded players. So we actually are able to help states work together without working together. And if you're a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan like I am, there's an episode where the actor who plays George Costanza writes a book, and it's called Acting Without Acting. So this is working together without working together, basically. So if each of them is involved in the National Voluntary Self-Exclusion Program, the player comes to us, we take in their data, and we independently send it to each regulator or operator that needs it without them having to send it back and forth to each other. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, but in the UK, my sort of concerns, I did quite a lot of work with some of the gambling care and problem gambling charities, and the problems were always around one, VPN access, and two, dark web. So if I'm there, Harry, and I've self-excluded and I've gam stopped, and I'm determined to mitigate some of these behaviours and get myself out into a better quality of life, and I have a lapse late at night, post pub closing, whatever it might be, a VPN is going to get me access, and the dark web is definitely going to get me access to something. Is there any mitigation for those things within either your solution or the national one, or is that still the sort of the elephant in the room that can't be stopped?
It's a great point, and I think there's no perfect way to eliminate all opportunities to gamble, but I think the regulators in the US are taking a big stand against offshore sports betting and illegal books and things like that are available to US players. So our hope is that they continue that, and they've had some success in many states, either getting these sites out or limiting their availability in some way. So there's been, I forget what they call it in the legal terms, but definitely cease and desists have been sent to a lot of these from states. I think it's just a matter of time until they're kind of rooted out of the ecosystem. But for now, there are tools that you can use to block access to the websites on your device, to the apps on your device, like Gamban, Bet Blocker, other things like that. So we think that when you put all these pieces together, it gives you that sort of complete protection. But there are, of course, ways for people to find gambling if their heart is set on it. And that's probably a small percentage of folks. When most people do self-exclude, they take it very seriously. Even in settings like a casino where you're only checked when you win a jackpot in most cases. So they don't know who you are until you identify yourself. And then at that point, they may do a check on you. But people who self-exclude, they don't want to even risk being found, and there's trespassing that can happen and all sorts of consequences. So they do take it seriously, and oftentimes will cease their gambling just by signing that document.
Okay. And what in that instance, this is intriguing actually. What happens if someone does win a jackpot in a casino and then is identified as being signed up to one of these services? Is that used as a rather nasty crowbar to not pay out because you're then found to be on the list?
Yes, but the funds usually go toward responsible gaming funds, or it goes to the state. So the property itself does not keep those funds. They're generally sent.
Okay. That's
to
sort of hard. I suppose that's quite a good way. As the player, you're probably a tiny bit miffed that after years of losing your shirt, you finally come good and you can't access it. But I guess that's hard to stop. I sort of thought identifying someone at the door, saying sorry, you're on the list, you're not coming in.
It does happen. It does happen that does occur because the staff are trained to look for individuals on the list, and they know their customers. So in especially smaller properties that have, if you're talking about a huge Las Vegas Strip casino versus a casino in, let's say Washington that has 20 machines or something like that, there's different scales of casino. So on the smaller side, they generally know every customer, and if someone joins, they're able to find them. If it's just a madness like Las Vegas Strip, then there's hundreds of people walking in every minute. It's a little bit harder to do so. So I would say it's a little bit limited by the anonymity of casino play that does exist sometimes. But there are also properties that employ their facial recognition to help them find individuals sooner and things like that. But it's definitely not a uniform approach to identification in a land-based setting.
Okay. Sorry, John. I've
Okay.
been buzzing in.
I was just checking that I was good to go. This is one of those instances, and I know that a lot of people in the US are extremely wary about federal oversight, governmental oversight, but this is one of those instances where a degree of federal oversight for states coming on board would be a fucking brilliant thing. Mm-hmm. Because what I think people don't grasp, and this is certainly something I only probably only understood myself in the last 20 years, is that when an organization like the European Union creates a set of rules, what it's actually creating is a baseline. And so they don't tend to be overly prescriptive. They just want to make sure that if you're going to do the absolute basics, that the absolute basics are set in stone, understood, your players will understand them, all that jazz. And it does feel like, even though, I'm sure operators are probably also thinking, fuck federal oversight, but actually, in terms of player protection, federal oversight would be a really good thing. I mean, assuming they don't fuck it up, regardless of what color the presidency is. But it could be a really positive thing where all of the stakeholders also have input.
Right. It could be, but if you look at any past examples, if you look at past examples of these sort of things, it generally doesn't bode well when the federal government gets involved, because
it probably takes decades as well.
States are extremely different when it comes to even what forms of gambling are available. So, when you think about the VGTs, which are video gaming terminals or video lottery terminals, they're often in restaurants and gas stations and things. There's a couple machines there. There's one minimum wage employee maybe behind the counter, loading the pumps for people to pump gas. Do you want that person to have to follow a standard that a Nevada casino has to follow, or
fuck yes,
an online sports book has to follow? So they're not paid enough to have to enforce a self-exclusion. So I think each state kind of understands its populace, its forms of gaming.
But the baseline doesn't have to impact individual employees like that.
Mhm.
Because in an instance, and you know, in an awful lot of US gaming venues, we are talking about minimum wage employees who have the greatest responsibility. Mind you, let's not forget, we've also seen casinos where executives on millions of dollars have said, yeah, fuck it, come in here, wash your money, it's fine.
Right.
I'm not naming any names.
You can name them and edit it out later, but
fuck that. I don't want Scott Sibella knowing. Anyway.
No, but I'm just saying, if the baseline is super simple and just says something like you must have a list that you're able to share with the national body and with whatever oversight committee they end up putting in place for that, that might be okay. But I feel like that's just a stepping stone to making it too complicated and making things that end up, maybe deterring people from actually using self-exclusion programs.
But it could be a baseline could be a requirement to have a certain type of software to analyze the accounts of tracked players if you've got carded play, for example.
Sure.
Little things like that.
I like your idea, Jonathan, or just your point about facial recognition. I like that one. I like in the world of AI and things being ever more pertinent and accurate. Everything mobile, everything via laptop. Most gaming machines have camera facilities of some sort. Gas stations, that's probably something a little bit tricky, but basically removing the human element. The minimum wage guy who's ticking gas pumping boxes, you can't leave responsibility with them. Automated to the machine, facial recognition. So someone goes up and the camera looks at them and goes, that facial pattern is on the database. No, machine doesn't work till they walk away and someone else comes in, and in half a second, face recognized and it's boxed. People would hate it, I'm assuming, because suddenly you've got Big Brother camera stuff telling you can't do stuff.
Yeah,
which doesn't
that's
sound
way
very
worse.
American, but I don't know. But that sounds like the feasible version of universal that gets rid of some of these.
Yeah, I think there's concerns anytime you have data on somebody. So even in states where you have to scan an ID to buy a lottery ticket from a vending machine, there's pushback against that because there's a fear, an incorrect fear, that this data is actually being tracked, when in fact you swipe your ID, it verifies it and wipes the data from the, it's not even stored. So even things as simple as swiping an ID to prove you're not underage to buy a lottery ticket, there's pushback and fears against that. So I think installing a camera is probably a step too large for now, but in the future, we've got self-driving cars driving around with huge high-definition cameras, and cameras are pretty much everywhere there. And when you walk in a casino, the expectation is, the eye in the sky, and that everything you do is being watched. But when you're, in a restaurant or somewhere else, you don't really feel like that's the case. So I think, attitudes change over time, but for now, I think a softer approach is the right way. And as people warm up to things and data sharing, that will be a little bit, maybe not cameras in every machine, but there will be more ways to provide a better self-exclusion from these type of environments.
One of the things one of the many things with online gaming that are issues for players. I mean, players will come up with things like, you're taking a fucking fortnight to pay me my money, or you're claiming that this is wrong and so you avoided that bet or whatever. But actually, I've got this weird idea, and I know you're both going to think I'm crazy, but I got this weird idea that operators should just make everything quite easy to do, including limiting or deleting your account. Because if somebody is having an issue and they try to close their account with you and you make them jump through numerous hoops in order to try and keep them, honestly, that's not a good look. That's what The Guardian is waiting for. That's what every critic is waiting for. You can just say, okay, no worries. We've sorted that for you. If you ever want to come back, give us a shout. But if you're struggling, good luck. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Right.
But then,
Obviously,
you're not
much
alone in
nicer.
doing that though. I mean, this is Netflix, Sky TV, pretty much any media owner, like most credit card companies, like all of them have got. It's effectively reverse UX. If you assume good UX is the fewest possible steps to get to a desired result, the exit process in all these companies, including some of the more nefarious gaming ones, is reverse UX. It's as many blockers as possible to
Should we
take.
call it XU?
XU. There we go. It's a new phrase. And you take Mrs. Miggins down 400-step process, and she gets lost at the end of it and goes, "I think I've closed my account. I don't want to bet anymore." Well, she hasn't, because she hasn't done the double auto response exit button, which was hidden and masked in light grey behind a picture. So they are. I mean, they're terrible behaviours, and most licensing authorities, it should be on the tick list of there should be 2 clicks to exit.
Right. And the problem is it's basically not a one-stop delete your account and then that helps you to stop. So in New Jersey, I can't remember the exact number right now, but at one time there were 20 operators in New Jersey. So if I close my account at operator A and tomorrow I think, I could use some action today, I'm just going to take 2 minutes, open an account at operator B, that didn't really solve my problem for me. So, one of the other things.
Hang on. I've got to jump in here, right?
Sure.
Because it's extremely well recognized among gambling researchers that an element of cognitive dissonance and giving people the opportunity to make an informed and sensible choice is quite important. And making it possible for somebody to delete their account and have to sign up again with somebody else, there's a big cognitive dissonance right there. So actually, that's like, this isn't the negative that, yes, it's easy for somebody to open an account somewhere else, but they also have a big opportunity to not do that. And that's
Right.
what you're actually giving them when you say
I'm not saying that it shouldn't be easy to deactivate your account. What I'm saying is that, most of the accounts have been opened before I decide to deactivate my account at one operator. So, for example, that I think there was a number floating around that 4 or 5 accounts is an average number that a player who's an active sports bettor might have, and you can imagine why. There's better odds for this match over here, there's better odds for the next match over here, and by the way, it's July 4th a few weeks ago. Hey, here's a July 4th $5 free bet from every operator that you've signed up for. So the incentives are to sign up for as many operators as you can, which then, of course, makes it very difficult to actually, deactivate all your accounts at once. It would take you, a session to sit down for an hour and go through each account and actually go through all the different processes. So it's not a uniform process where you just go to one page, repeat that process. You have to find it on each operator. So yeah, I agree it should be easy, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem for the player and for the operator. If you think they're going to play somewhere else, if you step in and help in some way, then the incentive is not to help in some way. So it's kind of a weird backward system, and I think over time we're going to see this responsible gaming responsibility shift from operators to regulators or to another third party. So it kind of makes more sense to have that oversight not done by the operator itself, is my long-term thesis on what this side of the business and industry will look like in 10, 15 years.
There's a potential third wheel to that list, though, Jonathan, which is payment processing and banks. Because if you can't get your money in or out, then you can't bet. Now, is there any feasibility? I mean, I'm spitballing here, but that's a truism. If there's no money in the account, you can't bet. So if you want to block your gambling capabilities, could that be a way to do it? Now, obviously, there's mitigation because of crypto, because that comes in more anonymized from other sources. Then there's the VPN and dark web issue as well. But on the regulated and licensed side, could you have more leeway in controlling the access to funds part rather than access to account part?
I think yes, it should always be player led. So if they want to limit the amount they can deposit, that should be something available to them. It is available to them on an operator by operator basis. We're under the belief that this should be something that's cross operator, that gives you, a jurisdictional at least deposit limit. So if you're in New Jersey, your budget is $1,000 a month. That's across all operators. It's not per operator. So we think that banks can get involved too. If you have, banks that, if you're like me, you have your one account that does one thing for your banking, the next account does something else for your banking. So you may have one or two bank accounts. It would be great if they could all sort of coalesce that data too and have that protection extend not just across operators, but across banks as well.
Yeah, it's such a can of worms, and no matter what initiatives are put forward, somebody would also always say, as Harry did earlier, somebody would always bring up, well, there's crypto casinos, there's offshore operators, there's fucking sweeps, there, you name it. There's a lot of ways to gamble that are unregulated. And so, part of me, I love what you're trying to do. I love what you are doing, I should say. The US fundamentally needs this. There's no two ways about it at all. But I think regulation, well, Christ, just look at what's going on with Kalshi at the moment, right? Kalshi are, I don't know anybody at Kalshi. They're probably very nice people, probably very kind to animals, probably do a lot of work for charity, right? But they're swinging their dick in various courts, basing that, and quite correctly, on the fact that the regulators can't afford a long court battle. They don't have the resources and they don't have the money.
Right.
Nevada might prove interesting there because the Nevada Resorts Association has become involved, and they do have money.
Yeah.
But for most states, it's not a fight they're going to even want to. Then it's not a fight they're equipped to even do the fucking research for. And I'm not dissing the regulators, and that is just the way that it's set up, and it's the way that the funding works. Kalshi do have deep pockets, and they're obviously willing to go to bat.
And, I think if you look at the two products side by side, you can't do as many things as you can on FanDuel as you can on Kalshi, but I'm referring to things like parlays or player props or things like that, but that may change. I think Polymarket was testing some parlay style markets that they were offering. There's just so many variations of a parlay. So even if you have, 4 different picks that you want to make as part of a parlay, that's 16 different markets that Kalshi would have to offer to satisfy all the bets that you can make on all these different things. So it doesn't really work from a logistical standpoint, but that doesn't mean that they can't find another workaround to make parlays happen, and then all hell will break loose. When that happens, you'll see the fight turn up to 11 in terms of regulators and operators and things like that. But side by side, they're very similar when you're talking about per match bets, and there's a lot less friction when you open Kalshi and want to make a bet on an outcome of a game. You just open it. There's no geolocation required. There's no 15-minute lockout of your account when you've just been inactive and you want to come back and place your next bet. They don't have to follow any of the rules that regulated sports betting operators have to follow.
And nor do offshore operators, and nor do sweeps operators. And it's kind of, part of me feels like, the RG movement in the US is pissing in the wind. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, because there's some great people working in it and there's some really forward-thinking stuff happening.
And this is where federal starts tipping its cap. It might be slow and unwieldy, and it might not be pleasant for the states. But if you want power, you call the federal government, and they look at people like Kalshi, and I don't know the entire story, but I've read a little about it. They look at that and go, right, we'll squash it. It's not paying money into the tax pot. It's not good for people. It's not very American. Yeah, get rid. But
the wrinkle in the Kalshi one though is the gentleman who is he going to be heading up the CFTC? Is that the?
I think there was some meeting that was either canceled or rescheduled. I have to get up to date on the news there, but yeah, there's some relationship between either a current or ex-employee high up of Kalshi and
a board member. Yeah,
right. So yeah,
but also there's the I believe the one of the president's children is acting, I think, as an advisor to Kalshi, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, everybody's got the right to work, but it doesn't half muddy those waters when it comes to, I mean, when it comes to legal arguments with things like this, as soon as you have to be whiter than white when you're going into the argument, because otherwise somebody starts shouting bias and you're kind of fucked.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of wrinkles to the Kalshi story. I think over time, the dust will settle and we'll see what the new landscape is. But I think they'll be limited in what they can offer. And if you know a lot about the U.S. sports betting market, parlays are the thing to do. So if they don't get into parlays, I think it won't be too rough for players or for operators in the U.S. But they should definitely have protections in place that are equivalent or better than what sports betting regulators have to offer. They did announce a couple things they're doing, but I think they can do more in terms of player protection.
This is really embarrassing, but I just had to go and check something, some terminology. I just wanted, my mind just went, when your brain just kind of farts inside your head. My brain did that. And I'm like, shit, is a parlay the same as an accumulator? Of course it is. It's what we call them in the UK.
Yes, I didn't want to fail at finding the right term that you use, so I just stuck with parlay. But yes,
Jonathan is fine. We use parlay too. John's just thick. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's impossible to disagree.
No.
But you can actually do a 20-leg parlay and turn 10 cents into $1 million. Is what I've done. Some of the plugging in some of the picks and seeing how far I could take it. I think the lowest bet you can do is 9 cents, and the highest payout is 1 million. So you can actually, pick 20 picks that get you to the max.
Equally, you can fly to South Africa, dig a hole a mile deep with your teeth, and find the world's biggest diamond. I think that analogy is absolutely fair.
Right, but that's the experience people are looking for. They want the lottery ticket thing that they can do 100 of them and not have to worry about.
That's the thing, Harry. Not everybody can afford a flight to South Africa. It's not a cheap country to fly to, but most people have 9 cents.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. It's a bit like the National Lottery. It's treated as sort of soft, accessible gaming, and it could be you. It's just statistically, it's hugely unlikely to ever be you.
Do not fucking get me started on the National Lottery. I've written thousands of words.
It's child-friendly, ice cream flavored gambling that doesn't call itself gambling. The number of research focus groups I went to over the years, when we'd sit there and the entire group, and I did a lot of them in bingo as well, so sort of quite a soft end of the sort of gaming spectrum. And they say, my family doesn't gamble. Do they play the lottery? Yeah, every week, all of them. Yeah, multiple numbers. Well, that's gambling. No, it's just the lottery. That phrase came back again and again and again. I think parlay sits in that realm of it isn't gambling. It's a bit of
right.
Because it's a really long shot.
It's a massively long.
Do you know? Honestly, I do think that the longer the shot, the less like gambling it's perceived to be.
I know, and the irony being, you'd be way better off to go down to the horse track and back 5 outsiders, with a tenner a piece.
I've tried that as well.
Yeah, I tried that as well. My first horse, I think, literally headbutted the first fence, and after that, I realised I'm not much good at horse race betting.
Right. Well, you bring up the lottery, and the lottery is changing. It's no longer, spend $1 and win however many million. It's iLottery, which a lot of the games look quite like online slots. There's a different mechanism to how the result of the game is determined, but for the player, they get the same kind of feeling they do from iLottery games that they do from online slots and brick and mortar slots. So the conversation is also changing, and lotteries are aware they need to do more, especially on the online side. So I think it's just a matter of time before that spills over into all products. It's just, like I said, a little bit harder when you're anonymously spending a few bucks on a ticket at a gas station versus when you sign up online with your social security number and address and date of birth. It's a lot easier to block someone's access to that platform.
That sort of innovation doesn't surprise me whatsoever, because over here we've got the National Lottery, which is once a week with multiple draws. Then we've got People's Postcode Lottery, which is a legal loophole that someone's exploiting, and then there's one around some charities that you can do, which makes it legal. Closer, even closer. Oh my word! I'm literally eating the microphone. Do you want me to swallow it, John?
No, you were just. It just keeps drifting away as you're chatting.
I'm holding it there. And actually, you spin it on its head into that slot type game, and you say, right, well, you have a game with you automatically generated a lottery number, and then the wheels spin and generates an 8-digit number. And if you match, you win $1 million. If you match all 8, if you match 7, X and Y, your game math can work out all of that depending on your stake and the stats and the jackpot prize. And anyone can do it anytime. And crucially, you don't get that end of the week waiting, blah, blah, blah. It's immediate. And so that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. It feels like, I wish I thought of it years ago, actually. I mean, it's a natural progression to allow immediacy into the big prize lotto game format. I bet that'll be hugely popular.
Sounds like it has some appeal there, but as fast as you can play is as fast as you can find yourself in trouble. So I know some jurisdictions have limited, how quickly you can spin the next, which who knows how well that's working. But generally giving people a few moments in between spins to decide if they want to continue or not is a good idea from my perspective. When you hit that auto spin, 100 spins and just let it go, nobody's stopping at spin 50.
One of the controversial things in the UK was the fixed odds betting terminals in bookies. And the big argument that casino operators had was, of course, that on a fixed odds betting terminal, you can literally just stand there slapping it and spin the roulette wheel fast as you like. I mean, you can literally spin it every 5 seconds or something.
Yeah, something like that. 7 seconds auto spin. It's incredibly quick, way too quick. As in, if you're playing the roulette games, roulette at least has the good grace and honesty to take quite a while for the ball to wander around and a bit of excitement and
you got to settle the bets.
Yeah, you got to settle the bets. All of that. You're talking minutes between spins as opposed to 7 seconds, and it's gone. What was that? Was that in South Park? The episode of South Park when I think Eric goes in to invest his $100 his granny's given him. And the banker's there explaining all the rules and saying, we're doing this and we're going to put in some high yield accounts and we'll talk about this and we'll do some heads, and it's gone. He's like, what do you mean it's gone? He's like, oh, we invested it and your money's gone. That's how it works. And that's what FOBTs always felt like. It was far too quick to ever be sensible. And
right.
You used to hear stories about individual players affecting company share prices. Somebody would stop playing for a couple of months and go on holiday, and the company's share price would be negatively affected because that's how impactful it could be on revenue numbers. Now that to me says it's too much. It's allowed.
Right. And if the argument is it's entertainment, which of course it can be, then if you're entertained for an hour and you spend a little less, that's a better experience than if you're just constantly having to spend during that hour. Which is another reason why I think long term we're looking at this responsible gaming responsibility shifting away from operators. Is they're not judged on how well they protect their players from gambling harm. They're judged quarterly on their numbers and how much revenue they're bringing in. So that's probably a difficult transition to make, but it makes sense that if you're not being judged on how many players you've reduced harm for, then should that be your responsibility to reduce harm?
This is the problem with anything, in any free country in the world, is over the age of 18, adults are allowed to do adult things. You're allowed to go and buy a ridiculous car on credit that you can never afford, that's going to bankrupt you for life. You can go and buy a mallet and hit yourself over the head repeatedly. That's totally illegal. You can gamble because gambling's allowed in certain places in the world. You can do all sorts of other stuff. You can drink yourself stupid if you want to. That's what adulting's about. So there's a certain point at which this is, well, you can't hinder people's freedoms in these countries, because that's why people like living in these countries. They have freedoms and freedom of choice. But without the capacity to regulate prohibitively, there's always going to be this wiggle room where people can get access to bad things. People get access to bad things all the time, and it hurts them, and hurts them dramatically in some instances. And you've got to accept it ultimately, that adults can do things that aren't good for them sometimes in free countries. For everyone else, there's the best effort with common sense and pragmatism to give them chances to exit bad behaviors, like your product, Jonathan. That's a best effort. And it sounds like in the US, it might get better in time. Everything will come out the sides, and innovation will come in with technology, maybe will make it slightly better. But there's always going to be a window of opportunity for people who really want to gamble.
Right.
On a device.
I agree with you. And I think this is more about removing barriers. The things that we're doing is about removing barriers for people to get help. So, one of the other things is the cross-operator self-exclusion that we're doing with a number of fantasy sports operators. So previously, similar to Wisconsin and having to go to each operator and self-exclude, in fantasy sports, which is not overseen by the gaming regulators or gambling regulators in any state, except for a couple. As I said, every state's different, but for the most part, it's not. There was no way to self-exclude easily across many operators. So now you can actually go into the RG page, and on the self-exclusion page, there's a box to just check. And once you check that box, your information is then shared in a way that protects your privacy, but allows you to self-exclude from numerous operators with a couple clicks, as opposed to having to do it at each operator. And this was a big lift in terms of doing it in a way that doesn't send competitors' player data to each other. So we actually anonymize the player's information as it's sent through, but we're still able to match if they try to log in or if they try to sign up at a different operator. So it's a little bit technical there in terms of how it works, but the main thing is now there's an easy way to self-exclude across all these different fantasy operators in one go.
That's good news. I mean, that sounds like immediate and definable progress in its own right. So, as long as everyone involved in the regulation part is genuinely there with player safety, player welfare at heart, and then there are operators wholeheartedly and not with lip service, because equally that can be a problem as well. Yeah, we'll do that, whatever's required of us. Let's find loopholes. We've seen that in certain markets in the past. So what you want is a genuine desire to be customer first. And then from there, everything rolls out.
And this is something that's not required by regulation. So I always think of the question, like if you talk to an operator, ask them, what are you doing that's not required by regulation or statute? And there are some that do go above and beyond, and it's interesting to hear their approach to things. Generally, the smaller operators, I would say, do the bare minimum because they're struggling to even stay alive in terms of market share and things like that. But, having those conversations, seeing what people are doing above and beyond is where you get to some interesting topics on RG.
Yeah, it's a first casualty of war thing that, when the going gets tough, the first thing that goes out the window is going to be all your good behavior stuff that you've voluntarily done. But John's laughing there. There are operators I've come across who go above and beyond. I mean, Tombola back in the day in the UK, famously, their brand positioning was hinged on we're not here to rinse players of money. We're here to basically make a fair profit while our players have fun on our platform. I don't know, because I don't play on Tombola, now it's owned by Flutter. I don't know, and I don't want to be too cynical about my thoughts on what happens when you join a massive multinational PLC. But in the old days, I know because I interviewed there twice, I think. So I looked at them in some depth. They looked after players. It was low stakes encouraged. It was lots of free play action. Community was the heart of everything. Great business. Business sold for north of 500 million. So it is possible to create a going concern gaming company looking after players and not trying to make money at every touch point.
The community aspect of that is really interesting, because if you look at magazine publishing is my background, but if you look at Runner's World, right, the ABC's Audit Bureau of Circulation figures for that magazine, they're not great. It's very targeted readership, but it's not great. It's like in the UK, it's something like 60-odd thousand readers a month. It's fuck all. However, they've got well over 400,000 registered active individual users on their website. And that community is what the advertiser actually wants.
Yeah.
And that's when that's the key to the tombola thing. And then fostering that and generating that. I've got a batshit question for you, Jonathan. Have you ever approached an offshore operator to do this?
I have not. So,
what are you waiting for, you coward?
So the way that self-exclusion works is that you're basically sharing names of people that have signed up with operators to block their access to accounts. So
sorry, I might be totally misunderstanding something, because that question popped into my head, because I thought you said that you were anonymizing it before.
So there's a couple ways to do it. The state programs require collection of name and pictures and all that. The operator one does not require that. So in theory, if there was to be some involvement with an offshore one, that would be in the cross-operator department. It wouldn't be in the, here's a list of the names of people that have self-excluded sort of thing.
Here's your new customers.
Right. But in general, I think our approach is to stay in the regulated and, as many forms of gaming that are available within the US, and see how the dust settles with, offshore operators and them being rooted out of the ecosystem. So we would never send self-exclusion data to an offshore operator, just because if they were to do something untoward with that data, there would be no repercussion. Whereas here, if an operator markets to these players, as you've seen recently, probably in articles that have been published even this week, operators receive big fines for marketing to these players and not properly scrubbing them from their marketing list. So it may even be something where it's used for marketing purposes if you were to send information offshore. But yes, in terms of the anonymization part of it, that's kind of a closed ecosystem of fantasy sports operators. I don't necessarily think there's a good case to get in bed with the offshore operators at this time. If the regulators are unsuccessful in rooting them out of the ecosystem and they become just a part that nobody talks about or likes, there may be ways to help people self-exclude from them in the future. But for now, we've taken a hands-off approach to those and let the apps like Gamban and BetBlocker and them kind of handle that side of the ecosystem.
Told you it was a batshit question.
No, it's a really good question, and it's a really complicated thing to think about because, on one side, there's the regulated market, and on the other side, there's the unregulated, but people are playing both places, so you want to help them. But at the same time, there's a lot of risks involved in doing business with offshore operators that may be, shut down or subpoenaed or, arrested if they come to the U.S. So that's why we tried to stay on the onshore and regulated market.
Have you ever watched Cobra Kai?
I have not.
Fuck's sake. Cobra
Don't worry, I have neither, Jonathan.
Kai.
I think I saw one episode because I couldn't believe they were trying to reboot the Karate Kid. Because let's face it, everything you need to see and know about the Karate Kid you saw and knew back in the 80s when he rather wimpishly tried to paint a fence and then somehow won the girl with frankly illegal kick on Johnny What's-His-Chops, which shouldn't never be allowed in a formal karate contest. But yeah, didn't need a reboot, didn't need more to come. We knew what happened.
But Harry, you're missing the genius of Cobra Kai there.
Is there a metaphor behind it that I'm somehow blind to?
No. It's not a metaphor. It's not even really subtext or any shit like that. They subverted the whole thing by making Johnny the hero and Daniel the villain. That's the genius of the first 2 seasons.
It's not Leonardo da Vinci levels of genius, is it now?
Well, not many things are. That's what makes Da Vinci so special.
Okay, but if there's a sliding scale and he's on, say, 1, we're nudging the sort of late hundreds before we get to Cobra Kai.
No, we'd be way down in the 700s.
Yeah,
we're down in the 700s.
Okay, let's roll with it then. So
but for what it is, it's a very, very smart way to reinvigorate a very fucking tired story. Well, plus, Johnny is a far more interesting character because he's a complete loser.
No, he's a much more interesting character. I think it was in, what was that program, How I Met Your Mother? I saw a couple of episodes of that. I think bored. I think I must have been.
That was fucking terrible.
It was pretty terrible. But there was one I saw, and they brought out Johnny, like sort of basically pointed out why he was the hero of Karate Kid, and I found myself nodding along, going, "Yeah, actually, this for a terrible and quite sort of one-dimensional comedy show, this is quite deep stuff." So I like that. What I didn't like was the trailer for Karate Kid when Will Smith's kid was brought out to rehash the role.
Great.
That was
great.
It was kind of nepotism gone mad, and really should have been destroyed in the editing room, but wasn't somehow.
It wasn't a great film, but it had Jackie Chan.
You watch it.
So,
what happens? What I mean, I'm thinking
exactly what you would expect. But I've done
do
3.
A stalk kick at the end?
No, I don't. Well, I don't think so.
It's a crane kick. It's not a stalk. It's a crane.
Can't remember. Let's call it the stalk kick because it sounds way more fun.
Doesn't it?
You kick the other dude and drop a baby on him. I've done 3 endurance tests when it comes to media in my adult life, and I've done. I watched all of Gilmore Girls, which I really, really hated so much. I just I can do this. I can stick with this. It took me months. I did all of How I Met Your Mother. Also just terrible. Both shows have something in common though. The mother character in Gilmore Girls was phenomenal. Actually, and the father. And I watched it to the end for them. Despite Edward Barnard dying. How I Met Your Mother, the Neil Patrick Harris character is, a funny line.
Stinson. Yeah. A
funny line occasionally. And John Grisham novels was the other one. I challenged myself to read.
Useful. Yeah, they're sometimes quite useful. Just when you want some trash to read on holiday, you sort of chew through a book that you can pick up and put down. You don't.
They're not even good trash though. They're just
stories. It's like reading a comic with
fucking terrible. It's like thrillers that aren't thrilling.
Before I ask you why you went through that masochistic effort in the first place, the dad or the granddad in Gilmore Girls, was he the love
head
interest
vampire
in head vampire in Lost Boys?
Yes.
Excellent. That's a hell of a CV he's got there. Well,
it really is.
Brilliant film, and then Gilmore Girls, and then the daughter was called Rory, and this is sort of weird. My brain doesn't work like other brains. I remember such useless information. I've never watched an episode, but I know the daughter's called Rory, and I don't understand why.
Both the daughters are called Rory. Daughter and granddaughter are called Rory, as I remember.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Anyway, that's not the biggest.
Because it's quirky.
That's quirky.
Sounds like I've got to update my watch list here and catch up to you guys.
Jonathan,
just fucking don't.
Time. Watch The Lost Boys 10 times instead, because that's a brilliant film that stands up to repeat viewing. Gilmore Girls, you don't need to worry about. How I Met Your Mother, there's probably a YouTube clip of the only 5 funny things that happens in that. And then John Grisham, there's a billion books out there that are probably better quality and more enjoyable than John Grisham.
Grisham, my challenge was I'm going to read Grisham books until I find one that's not shit. And it took 13 books.
You see, I'm never going to diss as an aspirational author. I'm never going to diss someone who's got probably more success than almost any other author on the planet in history. Bravo! If only I could replicate that.
He definitely doesn't have that. Although he is obviously highly successful.
Sold more books. He's sold more books than almost anyone else.
But almost anyone else is not the same as anyone else. I mean, Stephen King's definitely sold more. J.K. Rowling's definitely sold more.
Okay,
I'd say Lee Child probably has.
I suggest he's in the top 20 for modern authors in book sales.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so that's in the sort of over $1 billion of book sales in course of time. I'd say that's pretty good.
That's why so many of his books have a chapter on shopping for a private jet, isn't it?
Exactly. Grisham sitting on a yacht laughing. If he listens to this, which is unlikely, but let's play the game anyway. He's looking at you, dissing it, and looking at me going, oh, I want to be author and I'd like to write, and his books are rubbish. He's chuckling to himself while burning $50 notes. That's all he's doing.
Well, that's the thing, right? That's the difference between me and him, isn't it? He at least tried.
Yeah.
Fenton has this wonderful theory about I think he calls it founder's fear, that while the idea is in your head, it's perfect. Nobody can criticize it and it has no flaws. And that I've got a touch of that with the old writing, but I'm
going through that. I'm going through it right now with editing of the book I finished at Christmas, and every day I sit down, wake up early, sit down, and I've got the feedback from 2 agents saying they think it should be a middle grade book, and I'm like, great, some interest. They quite like it, but they think it should be middle grade, not young adults. And every day I'm sitting down and I get up my laptop and I got my coffee and I'm all set. And what I need to do is remove 25,000 words and basically just adjust the character ages from 16 to 14, which should be fairly feasible, right? And I'm quite good at sort of getting stuck into jobs at work. I just get on with them, priority list. I'm struggling so badly at the moment, and I'm kind of identifying that at the moment, that book has a chance of getting an agent and a publisher. It's still live, right? And it's this founder's fear stuff. I've really thought about it on a walk the other day, and I know that at the moment it's still a going concern, and I don't have to face the almost inevitable future that it won't get an agent and won't get published, and it'll be my 4th book to go down that slippery slope into self-publishing, which is just a quite sad experience. And at the moment, I don't have to face it because it's still alive. And God, it's an annoying thing to recognize that, because I have to finish it. I have to do this shitty job that no one's asking me to do, to get it done and then send it off and then deal with the inevitable rejection. It's just the toughest thing to have to do. And I know it's in the post. I know I've got to do it. It's a very weird thing to recognize that in yourself.
I'm just reading a collection of Haruki Murakami's essays about writing as a vocation, which is very interesting. I'm actually in his essay about editing at the moment. It's really fascinating.
I'd like to read that. I found Murakami quite hard work, but I think I chose the wrong book. I read one I enjoyed and one I found hard to get through. It was quite chewy, whilst recognizing it was really well written. It just was like, right, okay.
Yeah, he's got skills.
It's like a school project. It's a bit like, reading Solzhenitsyn or Dostoevsky or something. You read it because you think you should, and it'll make you more intelligent. But really,
it looks cool on the train.
Dostoevsky, it looks cool on the train. I actually did a campaign entirely based around that for Penguin Books once, called "Are You Good Booking?" based on the premise that men who read books are more attracted to women. Very successful campaign, 0 budget, but all the sort of research backed up of women make assumptions about a guy who's reading a book rather than a guy reading a newspaper, and then we
can honestly say it's never. I'm reading a book almost everywhere I go, and it's never been successful for me. There's something I was on a call before we started this, and I was having a conversation with a chap who actually was responsible for my entire career, the fucking buffoon, and we were talking about television dubs of movies, and it's not really a thing anymore, right? And actually, The Lost Boys had a television dub, or what I thought was a television dub, but now I actually think it might have been a sort of a sensibility dub, right? So in the original cut of The Lost Boys, and I fucking swear this is not the Mandela effect, right? In the original cut of The Lost Boys, which I saw at the cinema, I read the novelization. It's by Craig Shaw Gardner, who is also a terrific writer. When Corey Haim's character is saying to Jason Patrick's character, "Holy shit, you're a goddamn vampire." And he turns around and he starts walking up the stairs and he says, "My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire."
Right.
In any version you watch now, it says, "My own brother, a goddamn blood-sucking vampire."
Which makes more sense.
It makes perfect sense, but an agitated 15-year-old is much more likely to say goddamn shit-sucking vampire. But also that's what it was. And if I remember right, that's what it was in the novelization as well.
Was it?
But now, every version that I've seen in recent years all say blood-sucking vampire. But that also got me thinking. TV edits, right? They used to be edited for foul language, etc. The famous example is, and I'm going to assume they do this in the US, Jonathan. In fact, I know they do, because I've seen some very short versions of movies where, in fact, all deaths, on-screen blood, and all of that shit is cut out. I've seen some films last for all of 25 minutes in America. Die Hard, the classic example is, from yippee-ki-yay motherfucker, it becomes yippee-ki-yay kimosabe. But my very favorite is, do you both remember the movie Lethal Weapon?
Great film.
Yes.
I mean, it's a genre classic. Early on, there is a prostitute falls to her death, and that's kind of what kicks everything in motion. So Murtaugh is investigating, and you get the Lost Boys, the See the Summers hit on the cinema marquees. Lost Boys released a year later. Richard Donner, that directed Lethal Weapon, was one of the producers of the Lost Boys. But Murtaugh is interviewing a prostitute, a colleague, a sex worker, a colleague of the dead woman, and she's lamenting the fact that she's not going to get any business because there are police everywhere. And the original line is, "Oh well, all dressed up and no one to blow." It's a fairly innocuous line as lines go. The dubbed family-friendly version is, all dressed up and no one to go out with.
Are you watching these on network cable or something? Because I know when they put it on TV, they do edit out a lot of this stuff. But if you watch it, even on Netflix, usually they try to maintain the original. But when it goes on TV and kids are flipping through and stuff, they make sure they remove a lot of.
The TV edit is really a thing of the past now, unfortunately. But
why would they go with a longer version though? Because all dressed up and nowhere to go is actually a phrase. So surely that would be the version you lean into, not no one to go out with or whatever you said.
I didn't do it. It was not me.
Also, I think the professional lady's name, wasn't it Dixie or Trixie? I think it's because the kids are laughing when she's about to have her house blown up with her inside it. You're going to bust Dixie, I think it was. I think that was the line they shout across the street. That's another random one. Something like that. Anyway, totally useless. Not really that relevant. Apologies.
Bet you'd be good in a pub quiz. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us. Sorry for all of the rambling. There was some.
No, I appreciate you having me, and it's important to get the message out on all the things we're doing and how players can use us to better protect themselves and be aware of all the tools that exist out there. So thanks for giving me this forum.
Word. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Gambling Files podcast, please find us on LinkedIn. Give us a big, juicy, succulent like. That nearly went wrong. You can find us under the name The Gambling Files Podcast. You can find us on Twitter under The Gambling Files. I think the handle is just @GamblingFiles. You can connect to myself, John Bruford, or Finton Costello, also on LinkedIn. We're also both on Twitter. And you can find all of our previous episodes at www.thegamblingfiles.com. If you enjoyed it, please share, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues, and we'll see you next time.